spiritual flattery. And it works. It works. Psychologists studying this current age, and they are working overtime to try and understand it for us, they've concluded that we now assume that we're right 82% of the time. 82%. Put that in baseball statistics. I want you to do something. I want you to look at the actual decision history of your own life, your personal decisions, your romantic ones, your investments, your predictions about the weather, the stock market, the election, the friend you were sure was solid, the friend you were sure was trouble. How often have you actually been right? 40%? 50%? But if we talk about feeling 82% confident, I should say, if we walk around with that feeling, 82% confident, that gap between how often we're right and how often we feel that we're right, that gap is where most of the damage in human life is happening. Faith isn't the same as certainty. I want to draw a distinction here. I think that our culture has collapsed to our great cost. I think the distinction between what I'm referring to as faith and what I'm referring to as certainty, these aren't the same thing. In fact, I would argue that they're closer to the opposites. Faith, in its highest form, is extraordinary. Faith is what allows a person to keep going when there's no evidence yet that things will improve. Faith is what built every cathedral, every synagogue, every mosque, every monument that has ever outlasted the person who designed it. Faith is one of the most beautiful capacities a human being possesses. I'm not against faith, certainly not. I'm a strong advocate for it. But faith in its lowest form, faith in falsehood, faith in a position that has been artificially reinforced until it appears as truth, that's something else entirely. That's a kind of zealotry. And right now in this age, I see a great deal of zealotry being mistaken for faith. The person who's certain, really certain, no doubt at all, is not necessarily a person of faith. Sometimes there's simply a person who has stopped asking questions. Real faith, and this is true wherever I have looked, across every serious tradition, includes wrestling. It includes argument. It includes doubt. In Judaism, the great rabbis disagree for pages and pages and pages and eras. The Talmud preserves the disagreement for pages and pages. The Talmud preserves both sides of arguments, not because they couldn't make up their minds, but because the wrestling is the point. They want us to see the wrestling, not just the solution or the question. In the Christian tradition, you have the book of Job from our tradition as well. You have the psalmists of lamentation. You have a man on a cross asking why God has forsaken him. In Islam, you have a prophet trembling, and at the first revelation, afraid he's losing his mind. In the Buddhist tradition, the warning is constant. The moment you think that you have arrived, you have not arrived. That shows up in Hasidic thinking and Judaism as well. And outside of religion entirely, the founding figure of Western philosophy, Socrates, said the only thing he knew for certain was that he knew nothing. Every serious tradition, every serious thinker builds the wrestling in. You take away the wrestling and you don't have faith, you have certainty. And certainty without curiosity is just zealotry waiting to happen. I'm telling you what I crave right now. I crave gentle curiosity. I crave conversations where neither person is trying to win. I crave a Thanksgiving dinner where nobody has been told by a cable news host or a podcast whom to disinvite. Have you noticed that? We're now being given explicit instructions by people we've never met about which family members or friends to cut out of our lives. And many of us abandoning each other, we're abandoning our intellect, we're abandoning our reason, our siblings, our parents, our lifelong friends, because we're right and they are wrong and we are certain of it. Listen to the person who has the perspective that you don't have, even if it's on you, especially if it's on you. Even if their job title doesn't impress you, even if you outrank them, even if your ego is screaming. So what's the practice here? Because if I just tell you be more humble, it's essentially useless. Wise but useless. That's a bumper sticker. I want to give you something real, a takeaway. The field is called intellectual humility. I mentioned that before, IH for short, if that's more helpful. And it's getting serious attention in psychology departments right now. The basic idea is this: walk into every situation, every meeting, every disagreement with the working assumption that you might learn something. Think about that. Not just that you might be wrong, something stronger than that. That you almost certainly have something to learn from the person or the people in that room, in that encounter, even if you don't yet know what it is. That's it. That's the whole practice. Now, does that sound easy? Try it for the next hour. Try it for the day. Try it tomorrow. Try it for the next argument with your partner. Try it in your next political conversation. Try it the next time someone whose opinion you usually dismiss starts talking. Try just for a few minutes to come into that moment, that encounter, that conversation, wanting to learn more than wanting to teach. You'll find out very, very quickly how rarely you actually do this. Now, before I tell you about the rewards, because we need to know there are rewards, I want to head off a misunderstanding, because when I describe intellectual humility, some people hear weakness. Some people hear just agree with everyone, don't have strong opinions, or be a doormat. That's not what I'm describing. Clearly, it's not what I'm saying. Intellectual humility is not the absence of conviction. It's a conviction held with hands open instead of hands clenched. I have strong opinions. I have deep convictions. There are things I'm willing to fight for, but I try, and I don't always succeed, but I try to hold those opinions in a way that lets new information reach me. The opposite of intellectual humility is not strength. It's brittleness. The certain person looks strong, but certainty is a kind of armor. And armor is heavy, and armor cracks. The humble person can look softer. The humble people can update. Humble people can absorb new information. Humble people can change course without their identity collapsing. If I had to put my life in someone else's hands, I would take a humble person every time, because the humble person can be told that strategy isn't working and adjust. The certain person doubles down, and doubling down in the face of evidence is how disasters happen. And here's the part that I find most beautiful. The science backs this up. People who practice intellectual humility are happier. They have better relationships. And according to longitudinal research from Harvard, they tend to live longer lives. Now, I don't know what other inducement to offer you. You'll be happier. Your relationships will improve. You'll live longer. All you have to do is hold open in any given conversation the possibility that you have something to learn. Curiosity. There's a partner to intellectual humility, and I want to name it before we close. It's curiosity. If you think about that, I think of them as twin disciplines, two sides of the same posture. And here's something that I want to suggest you write down. If you're driving, pull over. But write this down. When you are genuinely curious, it's harder to be judgmental. And when you're being judgmental, it's harder to be genuinely curious.